Hey, Bاسم Gohar, we're so happy to have you today with us and welcome to Canada, your new home.
Thank you for having me, and yes, welcome to all the newcomers to Canada.
Thank you so much, Bاسم. It has been like ongoing learning journey for you. You had your PhD in health services, and you have lots of titles. I just don't want to forget anything. So, if you
Yeah,
easily introduce Bاسم Gohar to the family of the channel, please.
sure. So my name is Bاسم Gohar, and I am a clinical psychologist. So that's kind of my clinical job, and I'm also a professor with the University of Guelph. So I kind of have both roles. I do mostly research now, but I'm still fairly active, in the clinical field. I do services for children, adolescents, and adults. So I do mostly assessments, so diagnostics, but I also do some therapy, or I used to do some therapy for also children, adolescents, and adults. I work in different settings, so in a private sector, and I also work in the public sector. So I also help in the school boards and things like that for consultations. That's it. Oh, and the
Wonderful.
most important title is that I'm a very happy husband, and yeah. So that's my newest title.
Congratulations, God bless, and we're so proud of all your achievements.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Last couple of years, Basim, we noticed a great awareness about how to take care of our mental health and the importance of our mental health. And then we got hit with the pandemic and with all the stress, isolation, depression that it brought to our lives. How can we maintain a healthy mental state despite all what's going in the world now?
I'm very glad to see that, as a culture, as Egyptians, as Copts, that we're paying more attention to mental health. This is a really important thing, and it's something that the older generations didn't really see it, or maybe they saw it, but they just thought maybe it's not as important. Um, you know, and it is very important, and we're being more aware of it. And it only took a pandemic for us to really realize how difficult things can be. Again, I know older generations say, "Oh, all I need is to pray or talk to Abuna." These are great things to do. So we're not saying faith is not important. Faith is extremely important, but there's more to it than that for some people. So, as an example, if you are not suffering from depression, you don't know what that feels like. But for someone who's really suffering, so that doesn't mean that you would say that depression doesn't exist because you don't have depression, right? It's kind of like you saying, I don't, I'm sure, let's say, for example, pregnancy or delivering a baby. Oh, it probably doesn't hurt that much. Well, you can't say that unless you've actually experienced it, right? So it's important. So it's good that if you don't feel that way, that's fantastic. I'm really happy to hear that. But just be mindful that others might actually be suffering, and a lot are actually suffering in silence. So to go back to the question is, how do we maintain good mental health? It is different for every person. So I wish there was one answer that will help everyone, but everyone's a little bit different. But the two things that I can really talk about is reflecting. You have to reflect. So number one is reflecting with yourself to see what are the stressors in your life and find ways to reduce that stress. Sometimes you may not be able to eliminate stress, but find ways to reduce stress. So that's point number one. Point number two is doing things. I know that sounds really silly, especially if you're isolated, but bear with me here. So when I do therapy, there's something called cognitive behavioral therapy. So let's break those three words. So the last word is therapy, so that's easy. So we're doing therapy. The first one means cognitive, or cognitive means to think, okay? So thinking, behavioral therapy. We already know what therapy is. Now we know what cognitive means. So the next part is behavior. So what this model is saying for cognitive behavioral therapy, what you think will affect how you feel, which will ultimately affect what you do. Okay? So when you think, you feel, you do. So it's kind of like a triangle. And what you end up doing could affect how you think. And it's kind of like a triangle that just kind of goes up and down and up and down. So the best thing to do is do things. We don't really need to experiment with this because we've already all felt it. When you do nothing, even the healthiest, the happiest person will start having negative thoughts. Okay? if you do nothing, your thoughts will likely, I'm not saying for sure, but will likely go on the negative end, right? So what do you do when you start having negative thoughts? You're going to feel worse. And then your behaviors might be bad. You might start treating people differently, or you might start ignoring people, or you might be aggressive with people even. So, but by doing things, by having even a plan, what am I going to do today? Sometimes all it takes is like a 10-minute walk. For those who can't walk, it could be other things. It could be, I don't know, doing some sort of exercise in the house, or I'm going to do some sort of, I don't know, some activity. I'm going to maybe renovate the room, or I'm going to draw something. I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be anything too like intense or something that requires money even. But if you're sitting doing nothing, you're going to have negative thoughts. And I also caution people about electronics. Okay, I am guilty of this too. I spend a lot of time on electronics, on screens. But the thing is, screen time, it might be good. You're watching TV and you're watching movies. Yes, you're doing something, but your productivity. So if I were to ask you if you were to rate your enjoyment on watching like something from Netflix, you might give it a 10 out of 10, right? But if I were to ask you, how do you feel accomplished from what you've done? And you realize that you spent 3 hours in front of Netflix, you're probably going to give me like a 0 or a 1 in sense of accomplishment. Another example, if I decide I'm someone who's horrible at cooking, I decided to cook something. Do I enjoy it? I'll give it like a 4 out of 10. Okay. But my sense of accomplishment is probably a 7 or an 8. I guarantee you, if you had two people, same mood, even like if they're twins, the person who actually decided to do something more productive like cooking will have a better day than someone who decided to binge watch in front of a screen. Okay. Again, I understand that for some people, their resources to do things is hard, but try to create things. It doesn't have to cost money and it doesn't require a lot of space, but doing more things in a day will definitely improve your mental health.
So when we move to a different society, now we are facing some new challenges. Challenge of the language barrier, trying to find a job, trying to provide and keep same level of lifestyle. Some challenges at the workplace. All these challenges put some stress on us, and we want to learn how to keep everything outside of our homes so it doesn't affect our family life.
So that's, yes, it would be nice to do that, right? I still remember moving to Canada like back in 96. That's when we immigrated to Canada. So 96, it was definitely difficult. And I don't want to speak just on me because I think everyone's situation is probably going to be different, right? But what I'm trying to tell you is that I'm not someone who was born here who's not aware of the challenges. So I understand the challenges for sure. If there's stress, we need to be realistic with ourselves, okay? So we need to think of the things that we can control and things that we cannot control. The reason that our mental health goes down quite a bit in certain situations is that we put so much focus on what we cannot control. And when you do that, you're going to feel helpless. And not only that, you might actually become anxious, right? Because you're thinking of what if this is going to happen? What if that's going to happen? And having the what if thoughts, right? And these are some of the things that might actually keep people up at night. What if I don't get a job? What if I don't get accepted to school? What if I get fired? What if this? What if that, right? But these are perfect examples of things that we cannot control. Yet we are spending a lot of time and energy focusing on it. So what happens there is that we're not productive and we feel worse. So what we need to do instead is focus on the elements that we can control. So the best example that I always give is, and I say this to children, to adolescents, to university and college students, to people who are in the workplace, if you have to cross the street and it's raining, are you going to tell the rain to stop, or are you going to hold an umbrella and cross the street? Okay. So the answer is you're going to hold the umbrella and cross the street because you don't have a choice, right? you can't control the rain. I can't tell the rain to stop, right? But I can control how I deal with the rain, okay? And it might not be perfect because I can still get wet and I might still get cold, but I can do something about it. So whenever you face a situation where you're stressed about it, find the part where you have some control and do something about it. So if it's looking for a job, right? So what if I don't get a job? You know what? Yeah, it could happen. You might not get the job. But what else are you doing? Are you looking for other jobs? Are you talking to other people that could help you find a job? You know, we don't need to think that this is like, let's say, for example, that the stressor is getting a job. We don't need to dream that this one job is going to open, you know, all the gates to everything, right? It may not, right? Some, like, you know, when we add like the religion piece, so God to this, things happen for a reason, and this is God's will. So we should have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and that's okay. Keep trying all the plans at the same time even, and see what happens. But, you know, work with what you can control instead of focusing so much on the things that you cannot control.
One more challenge when we come to a new society, like from the Eastern culture to a multicultural society like the wonderful Canada where we live, we sometimes try to discipline ourselves and teach ourselves the rules, and at the same time we want to discipline our children. So we face this challenge. How can we successfully discipline a child here in Canada?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I know that every culture has its ways of disciplining their children. Okay, but I will tell you what's best based on best evidence in the research. Okay, so when we talk about discipline, there is really two ways to discipline. There is something called reinforcement, and the second one is called punishment. Okay, so reinforcement and then punishment. Each one of those have like a plus and a minus, so two ways of doing it. So I will go over the positive one first, or so the reinforcement first. So reinforcement could be positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement. So a positive reinforcement is, you know, you give something to increase the likelihood of a behavior to happen again. So as an example, if your child finishes their homework, you can give them money or a treat or screen time. I don't know, whatever you want. So now as a child, when I see that happening, okay, I'm excited. I want more of that. So I'm going to do that behavior more. So you're more likely to do that behavior, okay, if there's a reinforcement. I have a dog, so when this dog was a puppy, when I wanted to, you know, for example, sit down or to go to the bathroom outside, I would give it a treat as soon as the behavior happens. Guess what? This dog, all it wants to do is to please me, okay? Maybe not, you know, not all the time, but most of the time it does. So that's positive reinforcement, okay? This one is the most effective form of discipline, okay? The second part is called negative reinforcement. So that is taking away something to increase the likelihood of a behavior to happen. The best example that I can explain this by is your seatbelt or your alarm. So you know when you're sleeping and you hear that alarm, okay? What do? In order to stop, or in order for you to stop it, right? So you take away that sound. So I'm taking away the sound, right? In order to do that, I'm gonna get up. For me, in order for that ding, 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 that's the car seatbelt sound to go away, so negative, we're taking it away, right? I'm gonna be safe by buckling up, okay? So this could be similar to taking away, you know, distractions and things like that. Okay. Now we can move to punishment. So punishment is positive and negative as well. Positive punishment is adding something to reduce the likelihood of a behavior. So reinforcement, whether it's positive or negative, you're increasing the likelihood of a behavior. With punishment, you're decreasing the likelihood of a behavior. So Adding something is like when a parent would hit a child, right? This here is illegal in Canada. So you will get, like, if someone finds out, or a child reports it, or someone hears it or whatever, they will report it to the Child and Family Services. And this is not because we're blaming the kids or blaming the parents or anything like that, but they want to protect the child, okay? And actually the literature shows, the research shows that this is the weakest form of discipline. Because the child, if you take too long, for example, between like positive punishment to actually do it. So an example with the dog, right? If I say, for example, I have a puppy, I left for a couple of hours, I come home and I found the dog, for example, ate like my homework or something, right? If I punish it now using positive punishments, there has been so much time that has elapsed, the dog might not understand, right, the consequences. Or if it's severe, it's going to actually cause fear. So their relationship is going to change. You're not respecting anymore, you're fearing. And what ends up happening is more behavioral stuff might actually occur. Negative punishment is basically like when you ground somebody. Okay, so you're going to your room, I'm taking away your electronics until, I'm taking away your electronics because you did this, or you're grounded, you're not allowed to see your friends. I mean, everybody's kind of grounded right now because of COVID, but that's negative punishment. That one works okay. But I think, I recommend the positive reinforcement. So actually reinforce when you see good things. Like parents, I think sometimes forget to do that. And when there's something that you don't like, try negative punishment, for example. So don't hit or anything like that, but rather take away, like I don't know, take away their phone for an hour. Good luck, right? And see what happens, right? But it's really important, regardless of what you do, when you are calm and when the child is calm, is to have this discussion after and be like, do you know why I took away your phone from you? Do you know why you were asked to, sit in the corner or go to your room? It's because of this, this, and that. I want the best for you. I love you. So you need to show that you're also a loving parent and that you're not just a parent that a child should fear. And then a stronger relationship will build, which will likely over time reduce the chances or reduce the likelihood of you needing to always take away things and yell and things like that. Yelling, by the way, is also positive punishment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bاسم, for sharing this information.
No problems.
We'll move now to take from your experience with the school boards, and what are the services that are there for our children, especially our kids who are having special needs?
It depends on what the needs are. Okay. So from a school board perspective, first of all, you got to decide are you in a public system? So that includes the Catholic school board. I'm not just saying like public as in, so are you private or public really? Okay. So if you're in the public system, and that includes the Catholic school board, there's a lot of services available to different children, all children really. So if it's academic, you can get academic supports. Every school does it, or every board does it a little bit differently, but typically there's mental health supports. So through a child and youth worker or a social worker or even a psychologist. So that's like the therapy and things like that. And they typically, if this happens, they would like to have the parents involved in the care, of course, right, to help with that. Sometimes the challenges might be different. It could be speech and language. So for some children, their ability to articulate, so say certain words, and I'm not talking about an accent, I'm actually talking about certain words, they just can't say it, and it's affecting them in other aspects like socially or even reading. So there are speech and language pathologists that could support with that. There's also, sometimes a child might struggle from language, and it's not necessarily because of English being a second language, but that could also be a factor. So you can get English as a second language, so it's called ESL, I believe, or ELL, depending on where you are. Okay, so make sure that the school has screened for that if your child may not be comfortable with English just yet. And even if their English is good, I think sometimes, I remember I took ESL for like half a year. My English was good. I grew up like learning English and French fluent, but it was the slang. It was the way that they said words that I didn't know, right? And that was really hard for me to understand, because as most people that come from Egypt, they know the British English, which is the very proper one. Same with French. The French that they teach here is very different from the France, like the francophone kind of like French here is a little bit interesting. But in any way, in order to even get a little bit of that, inquire. I think everything is like they get it, they evaluate it, and they will tell you if your child is of criteria or not for that. So those are the main ones. Sometimes if there's issues with like fine motor skills, and I'm seeing that more in my work because I think kids are not using their hands as much because everything is just touching screens. So sometimes the fine motor skills are a little bit weak. Some schools have occupational therapists, okay? Sometimes the school will contract, so they will get someone externally at no cost of the parent to get an occupational therapist to consult. But usually the wait list for that is pretty long. Now, if you have a job, so if you as a parent have a job, make sure you find out if you have any sort of coverage or insurance, because some of these services are available privately, and you might not need to pay too much for it or anything for it at all, and the wait list will be a lot less. So I think the most important thing is to consult with the school, identify if there are needs or not, and then from there you can decide what services are needed. So for some children, it could be psychological, so maybe autism, ADHD, depression, anxiety. And we can talk about that. If you'd like me to talk about that another day, I can talk about that for hours if you want. But identify what the need is, and then based on that, you should be able to find the right service to support the child, whether it's an assessment or a treatment or both.
Perfect. And from here, before we leave this point, I'd love to tell my friends who asked me about, like the ELL program at schools. It's not something that it's embarrassing. It's a service for your child. Take advantage of it so the kids can catch up with their peers. So it's not something that we should be embarrassed about the doctor and when we see the doctor and what's required to these services.
Okay. So here's the good thing about Canada. If you have concerns, you can go to the doctor. Yes, there might be a wait list. That's okay. You can even go to, like, preferably if it's like your family doctor or your nurse practitioner or whomever, that would help. You can also start with the school. So if you're worried about academic things, start with the school and see what they see. It might be hard right now with COVID, but teachers typically have a good reading on their children or on their students. You can also go to the doctor, just as long as you go somewhere. Don't wait. So what we know for sure from the literature, from the best evidence in research, is that any issues that you're seeing, early interventions will predict better outcomes than waiting on it. Okay, so the sooner you act on it, the better, even if it's not that big of a deal. But think about it. If your child right now cannot see very well and you wait long, do you know how much impact that could affect them? Right? So getting your eyes examined, right? That's really helpful, because that could be a factor. But imagine if we know that there's a vision issue and we just say, we'll do it another time. That's the same thing with mental health. Things could get worse. So getting intervention early will definitely help with future outcomes.
Do you remember these two advices that you told me when we were preparing for this interview? You gave us some advices, and I don't think it's for newcomers. It's for everybody, wherever they are. Everybody's going to benefit from these two advices. Please, Bاسm, share with us.
I think I remember one, but you can maybe tell me the two, and I'll tell you. I think I know the one is about asking. What was the second one?
The other one is the job and personality. Your professionality, your profession shouldn't be your personality.
Yes. Okay. So the first thing is, if you have questions, you got to ask them, because if you don't ask them, you're not going to get an answer. Okay. So ask as many questions as you can to as many people as you can. Okay. Make sure you're asking the right people as well. I know as newcomers, sometimes we rely on like one or two people and say, oh, these are the people that I know, and I will ask them. But sometimes we're like, and I'm maksoof, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to keep bothering them. No, ask. Because if you don't ask, you're not going to get an answer. Canada is very different from Egypt in this situation. There are always things to know. So I've been working here all my life. So I've never worked anywhere else. I worked in the States for a couple of years, but I don't think that really counts. But when I'm here, every year I'm learning something different about taxes, about business, about education, about the way that I do things, the benefits of doing things a certain way, than other. And I don't think I know everything yet. I'm by no means an expert on anything because I find myself having more questions. But what I do is that I ask them. So if it's a financial question, right, then talk to someone in a bank. They love talking to people. It's free service. You don't need to pay anything to speak to someone in a bank. You're not sure yet? Talk to another bank. They might give you more opinions. Talk to some friends as well. And then based on all this information, you might have a couple of decisions that you have to take. But if you don't ask, nobody's going to help you. This is the problem. And I'm not saying that to say that Canadians are mean or are harsh or anything like that. I think people want to help, but nobody will know your needs unless you actually say them out loud. So ask, right? Even God, ask and you shall receive, right? So make sure that you ask questions. And if you feel like your question is stupid, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I don't think there is a stupid question. You just need to ask and ask and ask, okay? I have a friend of mine. He's actually a colleague of mine, and he's a researcher. So we always do research together. And I always, when he tells me to ask funding for this, and it's always awkward to ask money for like research. I say, no, I don't want him to think that, this and that. And he's like, let them say no. Why are you making decisions already? Why are you thinking of the outcome already? Let them say no. They might say yes. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, he was right. I was actually able to get funding from the university. Oh, all I had to do was ask, right? So if you don't ask, you're not going to get an answer, right? So ask as much as you can. The second piece is, I think this is a really touchy subject, so please don't think that I'm insensitive. We as Egyptians I would like to think that we're very smart people. And we aim for the moon. We want the best, right? And in our mind, the best is doctor, pharmacist, or engineer. I get it. We've all been there, right? So these are kind of like the 3 businesses or the 3 jobs or whatever. There's now lawyer and there's other things. But, we sometimes get so emotionally attached to that title, okay? I think sometimes, and I know when you come to a new country and you have to start from scratch, so let's say if you're a physician and you want to start from scratch, right? That could be really hard because you're thinking, أنا في مصر أنا كنت بيه, right? كله كان يقول لي يا دكتور والحاجات دي. But you know what? We should not allow our job, right? Tell us who we are. A job at the end of the day is only one part of you. If you go by your profession as your personality, I think you will, experience some difficulties at one point of your time, whether it's retirement or if things don't work out and you cannot become a doctor here and so on, okay? And it's also from a humility piece, right? Jesus was born in a manger, right? So we don't need to, that's what I love about Canada is that everything is basically on equal grounds to some degree, right? So, if you go to the public system, which most of our kids go, I could be a student sitting next to a doctor, and then the student next to me is maybe people who can't even get a job, right? Or have jobs that are, considered very low on the socioeconomic status. But go by the person. So it's important. It's just for your mental health, right? If you only think of your personality as the job title that you have, right? I encourage you, or I invite you to reflect and think of what else that you are proud of about yourself and what you love about yourself, and bringing God involved in this as well. I know this is a sensitive subject, and of course I wish the success for everybody here. I think as an Egyptian, I'm very proud to be an Egyptian, and we're very, very smart, and we're very, very we're very hardworking group. So I hope that you become successful, but if things don't work out, just remember God has a plan, and at the same time, do not be attached to that title. There's more to life than just a title or a job.
Amazing. This is a great advice, and it's for everybody, not only for a newcomer, even for us when we have, layoff, or, if you lose your job, don't mix your profession field with your personality. You have lots of aspects and gifts and talents, so you can look for these ones too. Thank you so much, Bessem. These are amazing pieces of advice. Of course, now we got the message that we are not going to force our children, but rather to talk and negotiate with them and to discuss the opportunities that are there for them. We can't thank you enough, Yani, for your time and for all these information that you shared with us today, Bessem. Yani, we're going to end it with a blessing. Yani, God bless you, bless your life, and bless all what you do. Thank you so much, Bessem.
Thank you, and please pray for me. Thank you.